It was April of 2021 when the first episode of Tokyo Revengers came out, and fans of the manga rejoiced, all 12 of them. Well, that's an exaggeration. It had a solid fan base to start with, but it is a fact that the anime boosted its sales to an astronomical level. It isn't at Demon Slayer levels to be exact, but even that took some time, and it certainly seems to be approaching that level, especially with the manga being in its final arc and having the hype behind that. But even then, the anime is not some masterclass adaptation. It is serviceable at best. The ending themes are literally the best produced parts of the entire show in terms of pure visual and technical quality. So it's doing all this without even having a great adaptation. You get my point. The sales boost for this series is genuinely pretty wild, and it kind of leads me to ask, why? Now don't get me wrong, I liked the series. I binged the manga in a little over a day and overall really liked it. But at the same time, I'm not gonna say that Tokyo Revengers is some literary masterpiece, because it really isn't. It definitely has its weaker aspects that are prevalent throughout much of the story. For example, I don't really like how Wakui writes the antagonists, with them either being basic obstacles for Takemichi to overcome or an overwritten mess of a character. Seriously, almost every time a villain seems genuinely cool and interesting, this man just won't put down his pen. Do you know how much better Kisaki and Izana would be if he just wrote less? I also don't love how Takemichi is just bafflingly stupid, with the plot straight up being solvable if he just had a couple more brain cells. That isn't even to mention that the time travel mechanics have no logical rule set and basically just exist in a way that lets the plot happen. And I have other issues with the story, that's not it. But here's the thing, I still really like Tokyo Revengers despite all of that. And a lot of other people really like it too, because again, stupidly high sales in case you forgot. And why that is the question I hope to explore and answer in today's video. Now beware, I am going to go into some manga spoiler territory. I did hint at some spoilers already, but I avoided actually giving plot details away, but that kinda stops now. Anyway, the Appeal of Tokyo Revengers all starts with Takemichi as a protagonist. And it's not because of any special quality he holds, quite the opposite actually, he's just normal. He is a normal person in a pretty grounded universe, all things considered. Even his time travel powers are less an OP ability and more treated as a mechanic to make the plot work, with lots of implicit limitations. It just lets him be a normal person at a different point in time, his actual capabilities not being affected by it much. Anyway, you get it. Takemichi is a normal person at the end of the day. That's not exactly a huge revelation. Where this gets interesting is how this plays into the structure of the story, in that Tokyo Revengers is structured like a typical battle shonen. Think about how a Tokyo Revengers arc typically goes when looking at the bare bones. Things are normal for the time being. Takemichi then finds conflict in the form of a new antagonist, one that is much stronger than him, and the plot progresses until there is a physical confrontation with that antagonist. Takemichi then has to muster everything he has to overcome the challenge, and eventually the day is won. This is the most bare-bones concept of a normal battle shonen arc, with obvious variation in details from series to series. What's interesting, however, is that because Takemichi is normal, he never actually wins his fights, he just holds out until Mikey gets there and wins for him. Takemichi's victory is in him holding to his principles and having the bravery to get through it that far. Now, the common battle shonen does have arcs where the strongest character does battle with the main antagonist before the MC is ready. However, that is typically done in earlier arcs when the MC is expected to be weak in the grand scheme of things, not in every single fucking arc. There is a very stark difference there because Takemichi is never meant to become physically capable. In fact, a large part of his journey is gaining the respect of his peers by being brave despite how utterly weak he is. This inherently separates Takemichi from most other protagonists out there in the same genre, and this kind of brings me to the point of the video, because this direction that Wakui has chosen to go for the story of Tokyo Revengers forces certain scenes to go a specific way. That way is Takemichi getting the shit beaten out of him to progressively greater levels as he takes on a greater level of determination or adds a nuance to that determination. It's always kinda the same, but just different enough to not get stale and keep the hype increasing each time. Let's look at each moment like this incrementally. His first real moment like this is defeating Kiyomasa, and it works as his first triumph because it's a victory that lets him overcome his past trauma and finally move forward into this new stage of his life where he tries to really save Hinata. And he's in that position because he's the only one there to do anything about it. He's not fighting the main bad guy of the arc like Mikey is at the moment, but he is just holding off and doing what he can in that situation. Then we move forward, and his pushing forward during the Valhalla arc is mostly about him making his place in Toman, as his determination despite his weakness inspires the other members of Toman who aren't strong, like Mikey or Draken. He does kinda get sidelined because that arc is more about Baji, but this was an important moment for him as well. Now, there is a bit more to analyze about the Black Dragon's arc as it pertains to Takemichi's character, but I think the core of it is about contrasting Takemichi with Hakai, someone who is both physically strong and mentally weak due to his trauma, pretty much the complete opposite of Takemichi. This brings us to the Tenjiku arc, and specifically a stretch of chapters spanning from 165 to 168. It is the culmination of everything Takemichi has gone through so far. He is now trying to carry the burden of Toman entirely on his own, saying that it won't lose as long as he's still there. He's facing and even fighting people much stronger than him, even being fearless with a gun to his face. And then he gets shot in the foot, and he's like, what, that's not gonna kill me? Oh my god, it's so fucking cool. I love that set of chapters so much. I binge read that, and was just like, going from chapter to chapter. I couldn't stop, it was so fucking cool. Anyway, every arc up to this point culminates in really what I can only describe as Takemichi being weak as shit, but still one of the biggest badasses around. Now, you might have noticed that I got a little ranty there, dropping the analytical vibe, but that's kinda the point. When discussing the appeal of this series, going into themes, characters, arcs, or whatever narrative buzzword you want to throw around, it doesn't really mean anything to the psychology of why this series kicks so much ass. It's a much more raw and primal emotion from watching someone who has absolutely no chance of accomplishing shit, getting it together and toughing out all the pain these people can dish out. Because, as I've said, this story takes the formula of a typical battle shonen for its arc structure, but the structure morphs to fit the fact that Takemichi is an atypical protagonist for this genre. Having insanely hyped moments is practically expected, but the way Tokyo Revengers goes about it has to be different as well. Takemichi will never be that typical battle shonen protag, where he comes in stronger and saves the day with everything he accumulated. In much the same way, we are no different from Takemichi. We won't be that kind of badass either, most likely. We're just normal people, especially when we were dumb kids who didn't know anything. And that's really what the appeal of this series is on a deeper emotional level. Takemichi's journey is about gaining courage and determination despite being utterly average and facing odds that even the strong might flinch away from. It's that sense of pure hype of a battle shonen plot structure combined with the grounded nature of the setting and its protagonist, making an experience that is both very unique and wholly undescribable. Despite the series' flaws, Tokyo Revenger just kinda gets it. It knows how to get under your skin and make you root for an underdog and just feel fucking pumped when he gets it done, partly because I think people relate to how normal he is, and we ourselves want to overcome our mental weaknesses. So yeah, all that English major bullshit aside, it's just really fucking cool on a level most people can get with.